In a properly designed resistance training program, with the operative word being properly, the coach or individual needs to address the scope of each session, how each session fits within the scope of the week, how the week fits within the scope of the phase, and how the phase fits within the scope of a cycle. In this video, I'll go over the concepts involved within the session and the week. There are 6 components to a resistance training session, although some are optional components. I begin sessions for myself and my clients with trigger point release. This is optional because it can also be performed at the end of the session or separate from the session. The reasons I like to have it performed at the start of each session are that trigger point release helps stimulate blood flow in the areas being rolled and can acutely improve joint range of motion and therefore the efficiency of movement, both of which serve as a primer prior to working out. Additionally, if performed often enough, it can reduce trigger points, which is good for the health of muscle tissue. So you're killing a bunch of birds with one stone. Typically, only about 3 or 4 minutes needs to be spent on trigger point release prior to the workout on the areas with the worst trigger points or the joints that will be involved in the workout. Next is the dynamic warm-up. This component shouldn't last more than about 5 to 7 minutes. I like to keep it simple and stick with leg swings, butt kicks, a piriformis stretch, a high step, and some sort of spine rotation and extension exercise to loosen up the spine. You can add more exercises if you have the time and desire to include more complex exercises, or you can delete or modify some of these suggestions depending on possible mobility issues or joint pain. Next up are balance and force absorption exercises. While technically these are part of the dynamic warm-up, I like to put them in their own separate category because it isn't always necessary to include these in every single session. The lifter just needs to make sure they are a fairly regular part of the overall program. Most people think of balance training as standing on one leg. This is fine, but it won't transfer over to the ability to catch yourself from falling because balance training is task specific. To decrease the risk of falling, dynamic exercises should be included. For example, backwards walking or jogs, grapevine walk or jog, and hops. For athletes, lower body force absorption exercises include hops, bounds, and jump variations. For general and special populations, it can be as simple as step downs from various heights. These are important to include because the body can both produce force and absorb force, so we need to maintain or improve both. After the dynamic warm-up, I have my clients perform moderate core strengthening exercises. This component can be placed towards the end of the session or on separate days. It's a situation that depends on how strong or weak their core is and how often they train their core. Most importantly, this component should include exercises for spine stabilizers such as these, and spine movers such as these. Next is the workout itself. I've created other videos that go into more detail on the workout, including what type of exercises are optimal for each repetition range. In this video, I'll just give a brief overview for a total body workout. There are 6 muscle groups to include, although 2 of those 6 don't necessarily need to be included every workout. It depends on the repetition range and how much emphasis the muscle groups need. Much like balance exercises and force absorption, they just need to be a regular part of the overall program, and I'll get to those muscle groups in a minute. Total body workouts move from large muscle group to small, and from complex movement to simple. This equates to performing compound or multi-joint legs, back, and chest exercises early in the workout, and shoulders, hips, and calves at the end of the workout. Stretching is the last component of a session, and it's also optional. It depends mostly on how much time the person has, desire, how much need there is, and whether they are stretching at other times of the day or on alternate days. Quickly addressing how each session fits within the scope of the week. There are two main things to address. The first is intensity, more specifically, subjective intensity, which means how close the lifter plans on taking themselves to muscle failure with each working set. One of the most important things to understand is that not every session should be at the same intensity. You don't always want to go hard because of the risk of joint injury or pain and the risk of burnout. And you don't always want to go light because you'll never progress and never make it out of a beginner range of strength. Some sessions should be harder and close to muscle failure, and some sessions should be lighter or further away from muscle failure to give both the mind and joints a break. The other variable to address is total weekly set volume. Current research suggests that to optimize the benefits of resistance training, sets per muscle group per week should equate to a minimum of 10, and preferably in the 10 to 15 or 10 to 20 range. For general and special populations, this range applies mostly to legs, back, chest, and shoulders, the four largest muscle groups. Smaller muscle groups like the calves, hip abductors, and hip adductors don't require as much volume. The main point is, similar to intensity, and not wanting to always go light or you'll never optimize the benefits, if set volume is low and you're only hitting legs, back, chest, and shoulders 2 or 3 sets per workout perpetually, you'll never optimize the benefits and you'll never reach your potential. So keep in mind the need to vary intensities and keep in mind to hit the 4 large muscle groups with at least 10 to 15 sets per week. So that sums up the program design guidelines for the general setup of each session and each week. Let me know your thoughts.